You have seen something now. Not everything. Not completely. But enough to recognize that there is a structure, a movement, a coherence that was not visible before. And yet, something has not changed. Even after seeing this, the Bible can still feel fragmented. You return to it. You read again. And once again, it begins to separate. Creation feels like one thing. The fall feels like another. Israel, Christ, the church, each begins to stand on its own again. So the question becomes unavoidable. If the structure is real, why does it still feel broken? Stay with that. Because this is where most people turn back. They assume that what they saw before was incomplete or temporary or even imagined. But that is not the case. The structure is real. What is changing is how you are seeing it. Because there are two fundamentally different ways of approaching something. You can approach it as information, or you can approach it as structure. And these two ways do not produce the same result. When you approach something as information, your attention moves toward parts. You begin to focus on details, individual meanings, separate ideas. You collect. You organize. You compare. And all of that seems right. Because nothing you are seeing is wrong. But something is missing. Because information, no matter how accurate, does not hold itself together. It must be held together. And that is where the fragmentation begins. Because the moment you stop holding it, it separates. Now, look at your own experience again. You read. You understand. You see connections. But the moment your attention shifts, those connections begin to loosen. Why? Because they were being held by effort, not by structure. And what is held by effort cannot remain. It must be maintained, repeated, reconstructed, again and again. This is what creates the cycle. Read. Understand. Lose. Return. Not because the content is unstable, but because the way you are holding it is unstable. Now contrast that with structure. Structure does not need to be held. It holds itself. You do not maintain structure. You recognize it. And once it is recognized, it remains. Not because you are trying harder, but because it is no longer dependent on you. This is the difference. Information depends on you. Structure does not. Now everything begins to make sense. The reason it feels fragmented is not because it is fragmented. It is because you are returning to an informational way of seeing without even realizing it. You see structure, and then you shift back to analyzing parts. And the moment you do, everything separates again. Not externally, internally. Now ask yourself this. When you read, what are you looking for? Meaning? Explanation? Understanding? Or movement? Because if you are looking for meaning, you will always move toward parts. And parts do not hold together on their own. But if you are watching movement, everything stays connected. Because movement cannot be separated. Now return to what you saw before. Life. Separation. Restoration. Life. That structure does not break. It only disappears when you stop seeing it. And the moment you begin to focus on parts again, it fragments. Not because it changed, but because your attention changed. Now this is the critical shift. The problem is not that you need to understand more. The problem is that you are returning to a way of seeing that cannot hold structure. So what needs to change is not what you know, but how you look. Now stay here, because this is where everything stabilizes. You are not trying to collect meaning. You are learning to see movement. And when you see movement, you do not lose it when your attention shifts. Because it is not something you are holding. It is something you are within. And that changes everything. Now, the question becomes clearer. Not, what does this mean? But, what is happening here? And, when that question becomes natural, fragmentation begins to disappear. Not all at once, but steadily. Because you are no longer forcing connection. You are recognizing it, and once you recognize it, you do not need to rebuild it. It remains. Now, one final question. If structure is always there, and fragmentation comes from how you see, then where are you? When you read? And that is what we need to see next.